Storm Eunice. Why weren't we better prepared? Welcome to Mark and Pete Live. I'm Pete the clergyman. With me as ever is Mark the businessman. Let's take a look at what's going on in the weather this week, Mark. What's this about Storm Eunice? Seems to have caused a lot of trouble.
Yes, it has. Many folk would have noticed that fierce winds from Storm
Yes.
Eunice have toppled trees and sent debris flying everywhere. It has caused disruption to businesses and lives all across the United Kingdom and, in fact, Europe. So there are some serious sides to this. People have died. But what really we want to get to is why were we not better prepared? It seems that like some of the extreme events in weather seem to be continuing. We have wind, rain, temperature changes, etc. It all seems to be elements of surprise. Whether the weather is cold or warm, climate change is now going down a storm. Disruption to the public has become the norm, and braving the elements is a new art form. Clergyman Pete, I ask you, what are you doing to prepare for these extreme weather conditions?
Well, businessman Mark, the thing that I'm doing to prepare is I just simply stay indoors and don't go out when it's too stormy. I mean, that's what I do. But I live in an area on the west of England where they're used to there being stormy weather. I live on the banks of the Mersey. And right on the corner of the estuary in New Brighton, there are storm defences. If you walk out onto the road that goes along the coast, the prom, between the shops and restaurants and such like, and the prom, which goes down to the sea and the river, there's a large concrete wall with a thick, several meters thick concrete gate, which is swung open, which can be swung shut at these times. So there are preparations in place. It's expected that you're going to get occasionally an incursion of water due to storms. So yeah, we're pretty well prepared in this area, but I do notice that that's not the case. So if you have a storm that's more widespread, or perhaps doesn't come in the northwest but in the southwest, then people aren't quite as prepared, maybe, as they should be.
No. Well, what we've seen is 122 miles per hour gusts actually hitting right across the coast of the south of England and many other parts of Europe as well, and particularly the Isle of Wight. Now, what's interesting is that this has set a provisional record. Yes, there is more to come. So many meteorologists are saying, well, you might think that that's bad. Yes, this is going to continue. But what we really are puzzled by is that whilst we know that this will cause disruption, hundreds of thousands of homes are often without power for many days and even weeks, especially in the remote parts of the world. And what I want to take here is a little bit of a lesson from other parts of the world. So I know that, say, for example, in our United States of America land that we all know and love, now they are very used to extreme weathers. But what's interesting is if I take one example, is Boston in the United States. And what I've noticed is that when they have extreme weathers, such as heavy downfalls of snow, they seem to have this military operation and rules which basically clear the whole of the network very, very quickly, to the point where they can get back to normal life. So they're all set up. Why is Britain always in a situation when they have extreme weather such as this, you have complete disruption? So, Clergyman Pete, I ask you, should the government be rethinking its strategy to help people get back to normality?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the issue is not necessarily the strategy this time. It's the strategy going forward, long-term strategy, the plans for how you cope with storms, because storms will always be with us. I've mentioned before on our show the fact that some people, Bible-believing Christians, believe that storms are signs of God's judgment on us. Now, I'm not so sure about that, at least not all the time, and I don't see any evidence to say that this particular storm is God's judgment on us. But if you do take that view, then, well, we're going to keep doing things God doesn't like, I think. Humans are like that. So we're going to keep getting storms time and time again. And just looking from a scientific angle, Storms will always be with us. They're going to keep coming back. So what you ought to have is a strategy in place to have different ways of doing things, backups, different ways to get energy should there be a cut off from the grid, from the national grid, different ways to have transport, and when the roads are down, there should be ways for emergency services to just swing into action and keep the country going. And other countries seem to be able to do this, but Britain seems to go for da 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 da. This is my impression of the leaders of the country. La 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 la. Oh, whoops! There's a storm. Help! La 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 la. There's no learning from the crisis. But if you ask me, what should they do now? Well, I mean, I think that the thing is now there's more storms on the way, possibly. But
yes.
Once you're in that sort of pattern, it's difficult. I mean, you can't just throw money at it. What you needed was an improvement in the whole, I suppose you might call it, infrastructure of defences against bad weather.
Well, that's true. But what I will say is this. Hundreds of millions of pounds estimated to date are basically being incurred as a result of these extreme weathers. Now, I ask you, Clergyman Pete, because, for example, the St. Thomas's Church in Wells has been affected. Its spire has been blown off. So what about insurance? So this is going to be another real hit to the pocket, both for businesses and for people.
Yes, it's one of those paradoxical things. Almost certainly, in insurance parlance, the spire being knocked off a church was regarded as an act of God.
Yes.
Well, what else do you expect to happen in a church? But an act of God simply means, in that case, something that couldn't be predicted, and therefore, you can't be expected to have seen it happen. Act of God often isn't insured against, although sometimes insurance just covers anything. Now, the issue here is this: that if you can't prevent something, some insurers will simply pay up. And in churches, that's normally the case. The biggest insurer of churches is ecclesiastical. Referring to bishop-led churches, referring to churches rather, ecclesiastical. Usually to bishop-led churches, but it just means a church insurance, and they're expecting you to run something as if there will be acts of God. Now, what's going to happen though with insurance payouts is there are going to be some huge payouts, but there are going to be some huge losses. With I believe insurers saying, no, we didn't include this in your insurance. Read the small print. It's an act of God.
Yes. Well, I think that one of the pieces of advice is that the weather conditions are going to get more extreme, and it is predicted that there is going to be bad weather. And we've seen that people have sadly suffered quite seriously with injuries and even deaths. So if you do not need to go out, it is best to stay at home and read the small print on your insurance policy. That might be a safer way of handling things. Yes, Clergyman Pete, any concluding thoughts?
Well, the concluding remark, just as we finish here, I think there's two sides of our response to this. One is, we do need to be better prepared. I talked about the storm defences here in Merseyside. There are ways to make your towns, your houses, your environment relatively stormproof. But in the end, when it comes to really bad storms, there really is nothing you can do, because it truly is an act of God or act of nature. Bad things, I'm just going to close with this thought, bad things happen even to good people. Sorry, that's where we're leaving it on that cheerful thought. Do get in touch with us, leave a comment below the video or next to the podcast, and we'll catch you next time. Bye for now, and watch out for the weather.